Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Listening Podcast. I'm really happy you're here today because we're going to talk about something powerful, unpredictable, and very important to understand: earthquakes. If you live in a place where earthquakes can happen, knowing what to do can make a stressful situation much safer. Even if you have never experienced one, learning the basics is useful because an earthquake can happen suddenly without giving you much time to think. So today, I want to explain what an earthquake actually is, why earthquakes happen, what makes some earthquakes stronger than others, and what you can do before, during, and after one. Let's start with the science. An earthquake happens when there is a sudden movement along a fault in the Earth's crust. The rocks around a fault can slowly build up stress as tectonic plates move, and when that stress becomes greater than the friction holding the rocks together, the rocks can suddenly slip. That movement releases energy, and the energy travels through the ground as seismic waves. Those waves are what cause the shaking that we feel. Tectonic plates are enormous pieces of Earth's outer layer, and they are constantly moving, although usually very slowly. Most of the time, we do not notice this movement at all. But when stress builds up and is suddenly released, the result can be a noticeable earthquake. Earthquakes can be tiny and barely felt, or they can be powerful enough to damage buildings, roads, bridges, and other structures. The important thing to remember is that an earthquake is a natural process connected to the movement and structure of our planet. Understanding that process can help us replace fear with preparation. One thing people often wonder about is why some earthquakes feel much stronger than others. Several factors can affect what people experience, including the size of the earthquake, how close you are to where it begins, the depth of the earthquake, and the type of ground beneath you. The point underground where the earthquake begins is called the focus, or hypocenter, and the point on the surface directly above it is called the epicenter. The farther you are from the source, the shaking may become weaker, although local conditions can change what people actually feel. Soft or loose ground can sometimes amplify shaking compared with solid rock, which means two places at a similar distance from an earthquake may experience different levels of movement. Another important idea is that magnitude and intensity are not exactly the same thing. Magnitude describes the size of an earthquake at its source, while intensity describes how strongly the earthquake is experienced or what effects it produces at a particular location. After a larger earthquake, smaller earthquakes called aftershocks can happen. Some may be strong enough to cause additional damage, especially if buildings were already weakened. That is why safety does not end when the first shaking stops. Before an earthquake happens, there are also simple things you can do to prepare. Secure heavy furniture, televisions, and objects that could fall during strong shaking. Keep heavy or breakable items on lower shelves when possible. Learn where the safest places are in the rooms where you spend the most time, and make a basic emergency plan with the people you live with. It is also useful to know how you will communicate if you become separated. Preparing does not mean expecting something terrible to happen every day. It simply means giving yourself a better chance of reacting calmly if something unexpected happens. A few minutes of preparation can make a big difference when every second matters. Now let's talk about what to do if an earthquake begins while you are inside a house, apartment, school, or office. The main advice is simple: drop, cover, and hold on. First, drop to your hands and knees so the shaking is less likely to knock you down. Then cover your head and neck, ideally by getting underneath a sturdy table or desk. Finally, hold on to the furniture until the shaking stops, because it may move during the earthquake. If there is no sturdy table or desk nearby, move only as much as necessary to reach a safer position and protect your head and neck with your arms. Stay away from windows, glass, hanging objects, tall furniture, and heavy appliances that could fall or break. One important thing I want to emphasize is that you should not automatically run outside while the ground is shaking. It might feel natural to escape the building, but moving through a shaking building can make you more likely to fall or be hit by falling objects, glass, or debris. The area just outside a building can also be dangerous because pieces of the building may fall. You may have heard the advice to stand in a doorway during an earthquake, but that is outdated for modern buildings. A doorway is not necessarily stronger or safer than the surrounding structure, and it does not protect you from many falling or flying objects. So instead of trying to remember an old rule, remember those 3 words: drop, cover, and hold on. If you are in bed when the earthquake starts, staying there is generally safer than trying to move across a floor that may contain broken glass or other debris. Cover your head and neck with a pillow and stay in place until the shaking stops. If you practice these actions before an earthquake happens, they can become easier to remember when you are frightened or confused. What if you are outside when an earthquake happens? In that situation, your goal is to get away from things that could fall. If you can safely do so, move toward a clear, open area away from buildings, walls, trees, streetlights, power lines, and other structures. Then drop, cover, and hold on until the shaking stops. Do not run toward a building for shelter while objects may be falling from it. If you are in a crowded place, such as a shopping center, theater, stadium, or school, try not to rush toward the exits. When many people move suddenly in the same direction, crowds can create additional danger. Instead, protect your head and neck and follow the safety instructions of the people responsible for the building. If you are in a high-rise building, stay inside during the shaking, move away from windows and exterior walls, and do not use elevators. Elevators can stop working, and you could become trapped. If you are driving when an earthquake begins, stay calm and pull over carefully when you can do so safely. Stop in a place away from bridges, overpasses, trees, power lines, streetlights, and signs. Stay inside your vehicle until the shaking stops. Afterward, drive carefully because roads may have cracks, fallen objects, damaged bridges, or other hazards. If you are near the ocean and the earthquake is strong or lasts a long time, be aware that earthquakes under or near the sea can sometimes create tsunamis. After the shaking stops, follow official warnings and move away from the coast or toward higher ground if authorities advise it. The same basic idea applies in every situation. Protect yourself first, avoid falling objects, and do not make a dangerous move just because you are scared. A calm decision can be much safer than a fast decision. Once the shaking stops, the situation may still be dangerous, so it is important not to assume that everything is immediately safe. First, check yourself for injuries and then, if you can do so safely, check the people around you. Look for hazards such as broken glass, fallen objects, damaged walls, fires, gas leaks, or exposed electrical wires. If you smell gas or see a dangerous electrical problem, move away from the area and follow local emergency instructions. Be careful when opening cabinets or doors because objects may have shifted and could fall. Remember that aftershocks can happen after the main earthquake. They are smaller earthquakes that follow the first event, and they can cause additional damage to structures that have already been weakened. If you are inside a damaged building, leave when it is safe to do so and stay away from the building afterward. Do not go back inside simply because you forgot something or want to check your belongings. If you are trapped, try to stay calm and make your location known. You can use a text message if possible or make noise by tapping on a pipe or wall. Protect your mouth, nose, and eyes from dust, and avoid shouting continuously because it can make you breathe in more dust and waste energy. Another useful habit after an earthquake is to rely on official information instead of rumors on social media. Emergency services, local authorities, and trusted scientific organizations can provide updates about damage, aftershocks, roads, evacuations, and other hazards. Try to keep phone calls limited to emergencies when communication systems are overloaded. If you have prepared an emergency kit, it can also be extremely helpful. Water, basic food, a flashlight, batteries, necessary medications, a first aid kit, and important contact information are examples of supplies that can help during an emergency. Preparation may seem boring when everything is normal, but that is exactly when it is easiest to prepare. There are also a few earthquake myths that are worth clearing up. One common idea is that animals can predict earthquakes before humans can. People have reported unusual animal behavior before some earthquakes, but there is no reliable evidence that animals can consistently predict when an earthquake will happen. Another myth is that earthquakes always come with a clear warning. In reality, many earthquakes begin suddenly, which is why preparation is so important. Some places have earthquake early warning systems that can provide a few seconds of warning after an earthquake has started, before strong shaking reaches a particular location. However, this is not the same as predicting an earthquake days or weeks in advance. Scientists can study faults, seismic activity, and earthquake hazards, but they cannot currently predict the exact time, location, and size of a future earthquake. I think this is important because it helps us focus on what we can control. We cannot stop an earthquake or know exactly when the next one will happen. What we can do is prepare our homes, learn safe actions, make plans, and practice them. If you have children, explaining earthquake safety calmly can help them feel prepared instead of frightened. You can practice drop, cover, and hold on together and talk about safe places in different rooms. At work or school, learn the emergency procedures and know where the meeting areas are. Preparation should not be about living in fear. It is about building confidence through knowledge. When you know what to do, you do not have to waste precious seconds deciding how to react. You can respond more calmly and have a better chance of avoiding injury. That is one of the most valuable lessons earthquakes can teach us. We cannot control every natural event, but we can control how prepared we are. A little preparation today can make a real difference when an emergency happens. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope this conversation helped you understand earthquakes a little better and, more importantly, helped you feel more prepared. If you remember only a few things from this episode, remember these. Earthquakes happen because of sudden movement along faults. They can happen with little or no warning, and the safest response during shaking is usually drop, cover, and hold on. If you are indoors, stay there during the shaking and protect yourself from falling objects. If you are outside, move away from buildings, trees, power lines, and other hazards. If you are driving, stop carefully in a safe place and stay inside the vehicle until the shaking ends. After an earthquake, check for injuries, watch for hazards and aftershocks, follow official information, and stay away from damaged buildings. I also want you to remember that learning about emergencies does not have to make us afraid of them. In fact, knowledge can give us a sense of control when something unexpected happens. We may not be able to predict every earthquake or prevent one from occurring, but we can choose to be informed, prepared, and thoughtful. And if you are using this episode to practice your English, you have also learned useful vocabulary connected to science, safety, emergencies, and everyday situations. You can pause the episode, repeat the sentences, and listen again whenever you want. Thank you so much for spending these minutes with me today. I really appreciate having you here and learning together. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and remember that being prepared is not about expecting the worst. It is about being ready to protect yourself and the people around you when it matters. I'll see you in the next episode of the English Listening Podcast. Until then, take care, keep learning, and keep listening.